I'm Caden Love.
And I'm Seema Love, his wife.
And we are Love and Lore, taking dark fantasy, light fantasy, and everything in between. And we know that so many of you love Brandon Sanderson. Many of you have read the Cosmere, reread the Cosmere, and reread it 5 more times. And we love Brandon Sanderson, but we know that sometimes you need something a little different. So we have 5 series recommendations based on your favorite 5 Brandon Sanderson books. These might not be your favorite, but these are some of ours. So we want to give you ones that have similar feelings, maybe similar magic systems, and similar levels of complexity. I feel like most people, even Brandon Sanderson, says to start with Mistborn. So we are going to start off with a series that feels a lot like Mistborn. We set it in kind of a fantasy world that has some bit of modernity to it, and think of the pushing and pulling with metals in there, and you've got the magic system in Threadlight. This series is a trilogy by Zach Argyle, independently published, and this is one of my favorite fantasy series ever. A lot of this comes from a magic system where things are connected by threads, so the characters push, pull, and there are so many great things here. There are multiple perspectives, and it is just such a great story, and it feels like Brandon Sanderson. Definitely has that tone, and honestly, this is a series that I recommend to anyone that likes fantasy. You cannot go wrong with Zach Argyle's Threadlight trilogy because it has everything. It has the young, ambitious female, kind of like Vin. It's got little bits of romance. It is just so enjoyable, and this is the awesome omnibus edition, but you can buy the books separately, starting with A Voice of War for book 1.
Next is a recommendation for girls who really liked Warbreaker. And my favorite part about Warbreaker was first, magic system, and second of all, it was this trope of a girl who is engaged to this guy in a different land, whom she doesn't know, and then they get closer as the book progresses. That is one of my favorite tropes, which I also saw in a book called Shielded. It's actually by a local Utah author, so if you will be reading this, you'll be supporting a smaller author. And it was, in that book, this trope was done so well. Unfortunately, it doesn't have an interesting magic system like Warbreaker does, but if you just want the same relationship feeling that Warbreaker gave you, check out Shielded.
Next, let's go to one of our shared favorite books, and that is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. This is such a unique book, especially because it bridges 2 very different worlds, 2 different magic systems. So let's go ahead and focus on the character who we know as Painter in the beginning. And we look at his world. It is very Asian inspired, and it has a magic system that seems very cyberpunkish. Lots of magenta and blue. And if you love those, we've got to go to one of the foundational books of cyberpunk, that being Neuromancer by William Gibson. I will warn that this book is not very straightforward like a lot of Sanderson books are. This was written pre the internet as we know it, and so the way that this character goes about navigating the cyberverse, it is very unique, very interesting, but what this book is, in essence, is we follow a character named Case, who is, in essence, this great hacker, and he just goes on this web of mysteries, but a lot of it does take place in Asian locations, so you definitely have some of those vibes from Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. And if that isn't convincing enough, Apple TV is soon going to be doing a series based on Neuromancer, which, like I said, this is a very different kind of book, so I'm really interested to see how they translate it. But if you like Painter's World, there's a good chance you will love the world introduced in Neuromancer.
Okay, next book I wanted to mention is Skyward, which is a futuristic, kind of like space war, space travel vibe with some romance in it. For this book, I cannot recommend enough Lunar Chronicles. To be honest, I kind of liked Lunar Chronicles even more than I liked Skyward. I actually did not finish the Skyward series because romance was going too slow for me, and just Lunar Chronicles hit the spot harder for me. So if you want some romance in a futuristic space kind of world, check out Lunar Chronicles.
Now we have the crowning jewel of Sanderson's works. That is the Stormlight Archive. There is so much going on here. Big epic world building, multiple points of view, and something that is a very different take on what we usually see as a medieval world. So, might as well introduce the book that was so inspired by it, and that is going to be my book, Elegy of a Fragmented Vineyard, and the recently published book 2, Duet of Pernicious Eels. This focuses on an organ transplant-based magic system, and I pitch it as an epic political fantasy, meaning that we follow a lot of the characters' workings, their organizations working together, like we see between the camps and kingdoms in the Stormlight archive. I love that series so much, and it was a huge inspiration to this, so I highly, highly recommend you check it out, because I think if you like Sanderson, you'll like the prose style in here and the world building, which was such a pillar focus. One final recommendation, this is if you're ready to go expert level. This is for fans of the Cosmere in general. If you love a huge interconnected world, there is one series that is so big and ambitious that will keep you searching for lore as you do on the Coppermind and other online forums, and that is going to be the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. The main series includes 10 books, even though book 1 is only around 600 pages, most of them are over 1,000 pages, like the Stormlight archive. Then there are more books in the interconnected world, also co-authored by another author besides Stephen Erickson. This series is very difficult to get into if you are not well acquainted with a lot of fantasy. You're thrown right into the world and you have to suddenly figure out lots of history and other things throughout time as you go throughout this series. When you really start to understand things, it becomes so wonderful. And this book is not for everyone, but if you really love diving deep into the Cosmere lore, finding secrets, little hints here and there at interconnected moments, I cannot recommend the Malazan series enough.
So yeah, these are our recommendations. If you have any other ones, please share them in the comments and let us know if you want part 2 of this video. We would gladly find more books that give you the Brandon Sanderson vibes and feelings. So thank you for watching and see you in the next video.